Prisons are usually horrible places to be, much more violent than normal society. Now, that might not come as much of a surprise to you. But why? Well, you're likely to think it's one of two explanations. One is, well, they are designed to be unpleasant, and anyone in that situation is going to be aggressive. Or you might think, well, we do go through all of the effort of catching the criminal members of society and putting them in one place. And many of those criminals have committed violent crimes, so of course they'll just continue their violent acts while in prison. Well, that's a basic outline of two psychological theories, situational and dispositional. So let's dig a little deeper into those theories and see what evidence there is for them. Psychboost.com, over 170 videos to help you with your qualification, and Patreon supporters can access bonus resources, tutorial videos, and the Discord channel. Institutional aggression. So this is all about institutional aggression. The word institutional is pretty wide. It's basically any human organisation. Within any organisation, people are likely to share some behaviour and ideals. Your school is an institution, and so is your family. Now, when we think of institutions that are associated with aggressive behaviour, you might think of the army or police force. But in this video, we want to explain aggression within prisons. So, let's get the definitions of our two explanations clear first. When we suggest aggression in prisons is due to dispositional factors, we're saying that aggression is primarily because of the personal characteristics of the prisoners. Importantly, not the physical environment of the prison. And we can flip that around in our definition of situational factors. The aggression is primarily due to the environment of the prison, not the personal characteristics of the prisoners. Okay, simple enough. Let's dive a little deeper. Dispositional factors. If we're making an argument for dispositional factors being the reason for prison aggression, we're saying its factors are internal to each prisoner. There are lots of examples, but perhaps they biologically feel high levels of anger. Maybe they don't fully think through the consequences of their actions and are impulsive. Or maybe they do, but they have learned that aggression is a way to solve problems. And maybe they've been socialized into expecting and accepting aggression. So no surprise if we gather all of these people off the streets and put them into one place, we'll concentrate all of that aggression into the prison. Now, another name for this theory we should know is the importation model. These problems have been moved from the streets and imported into the environment of the prison. One potential characteristic we can say a little more on is gang membership. Gang members will bring their baggage from outside the prison inside, so the same allegiances and rivalries and a gang understanding of how conflicts are resolved. Often their aggression serves a purpose. Maybe they need to show dominance, or they've been asked by their gang to settle a score. We would call this type of violence instrumental, violence used as a tool. We can also consider other wider issues. Many prisoners are suffering from alcohol and drug addiction, and many of the people are from disadvantaged educational backgrounds and might have few prospects outside. And there are also biological factors. Young males are by far the most likely to be imprisoned, and it's likely the high testosterone levels in this group has a link to the aggression they display. Situational factors. So in this explanation, we're suggesting that the reason for prison aggression is largely external from the personal characteristics of the prisoners. Prisons are unpleasant and stressful pretty much by design. The idea being, if it's unpleasant, people don't want to return, reducing recidivism. This combined with poor prison management can put people into a situation in which the only possible behavioural response is aggression. Now, researchers call this criminogenic. The criminally aggressive behaviour is generated by the environmental conditions. Some of the physical characteristics I'm thinking about are poor layout, so one that puts lots of prisoners close together so they've got no privacy and are constantly exposed to loud noises. Also places to gain and hide weaponry, combined with places not covered by guards or CCTV, meaning prisoners constantly fear they'll be attacked. And many prisons have poor quality or completely lack facilities like libraries and gyms. And this can lead to boredom and frustration. And that's just the building. Aggression can result from inexperienced prison staff who don't know how to handle and diffuse prison conflicts. And there are also issues around the racial and gender background of the prison staff and how that's related to the experience of the prisoners. Now, of course, prisons are places where people are deprived of their freedom, but that's not all they're deprived of. The deprivation model suggests that depriving people of autonomy, but also access to heterosexual relationships and a sense of safety, leads to stress, frustration, and fear, resulting in aggression. This type of aggression in response to stress isn't pre-planned, and we would call it expressive violence. Dispositional and situational factors research evaluations. I'm going to mention two research evaluations. Now, as these are opposite explanations, the presence of support for one explanation can be used as a potential limitation of the other explanation. Keep that in mind as I discuss them, and think about how you'd reword it if you had to write an essay on just one of these explanations. Berry investigated if the quality of actual prison conditions is associated with real examples of aggression in prison. So, two sets of data was combined. First, data from a questionnaire that was sent to prison staff from all the 117 prisons run by the US Bureau of Prisons. This included a set of questions about what the conditions were like at the prisons. This data was then matched to the data every prison has to record when a serious example of violence happens. So, a serious assault or murder. Now, the results did show that violence was significantly higher in prisons with poor conditions, including noise levels, poor hygiene that was judged by the presence of rodents and cockroaches, and how little privacy was available to the prisoners. Interestingly, the study also found that the prisons with the most white staff and fewest female staff had significantly more violence. All of these issues are situational factors under the control of prison management. Now, a counter study is by DeLisi. This used a review of over 2,500 young male offenders. It included their personal characteristics and their criminal history. This was then used to see if it could predict how they'll behave when imprisoned. Certain dispositional factors did make aggression towards other prisoners and prison staff more likely, if they spent time living in care, and if they'd experienced poverty growing up, and if they had a history of being violent to their family members. So this does suggest that dispositional factors developed early in life can result in prison violence. In the paper, DeLisi suggests this is evidence of a life course imputation model, with negative early experiences before and during prison cascading into more and more violence both inside and outside prison. General evaluations. So I think one of the most interesting aspects of this research is in its application, and that makes this research socially sensitive. Conducting this kind of research can have real-world implications on the experiences of the group that we're studying, in this case prisoners. Let's say research finds that violence in prison is due to the conditions. Well, not many people want prisons to be nice, but most people would agree that the state has a duty to at least make sure people are safe while imprisoned, so they can be rehabilitated and eventually rejoin society. This type of research would support arguments to improve prison facilities and the lives of prisoners. However, research that shows prison aggression is due to the personal characteristics of the prisoners can't be changed with better conditions and management, and it could be used by politicians to argue that budgets can be cut, making conditions even worse. Zimbardo's Stanford Prison Study is a support of situational aggression. Participants in the study were students at a top university and screened before entry, making them unlikely to have dispositional characteristics predisposing them to aggression. But the Stanford Prison experiment quickly resulted in both verbal and physical aggression from guards and prisoners. It's argued this is because of the situational pressure of the prison environment that Zimbardo simulated. Notice I'm really linking Zimbardo's study here with the language of institutional aggression. And finally, a good way to finish on pretty much any essay in this area is by talking about the interactionist approach. It's likely more valid not to say it's either dispositional or situational, but that it's a combination of the two processes. There are likely some prisoners who are more predisposed to aggression than other prisoners, but that aggression is more likely to be expressed if they're put into situations that they feel the need to be aggressive in. So if they feel the need to show dominance if threatened, or they lack the resources that aggression will get them access to, or if they feel it's the only way to show they're unhappy with their conditions. Here's a real aggression exam question. Give it a go and see how you do. I want to thank everyone who supported this channel over on Patreon during the creation of the aggression unit. You're helping to make the development of these free A-level videos possible. And if you're a PsychBoost patron, then you're on level and above, you can access 6 bonus aggression tutorial videos over on psychboost.com. And in them, I'll talk you through a model answer for the exam questions, and I'll share some general exam tips based on the exam reports. Synapse patrons and above can access a printable poster, a 90-question quiz sheet covering the aggression unit, and an essay table. Neuron can get a set of worksheets and the script for this video. I've designed all of them to work together alongside these videos to make a complete set of notes and revision materials. But for everybody else, like and subscribe so you don't miss videos released right up to your exams.